first rule of game mastering is you will not run the adventure as planned. Role-playing is a collaborative activity. That means your players have the power to influence the events of the game in weird and unexpected ways. The first step toward becoming a better game master is to accept this fact. What you planned in your mind and what will actually happen in your table may be very, very different. This is a curveball that many game masters have difficulty dealing with. Staying flexible and expecting the unexpected is a very difficult skill to master. But, like in most skills we need as game masters, we can prepare ourselves ahead of time, either through creating aids or practicing skills in order to help us during the session. In Chapter 5, we discussed identifying which scenes or elements are essential and which are optional. Remember? The optional elements are everything that is not needed for the continuation of the game, and the essential is everything that is needed in order for your game to move forward to completion. This distinction is important for dealing with unexpected players' choices, because during the actual gameplay, the players might take a different path than the one we planned. We can be a lot more flexible if we keep in our mind the separation between the essential and the optional elements of our adventure, so that when we need to make a snap judgment mid-session to decide if we should railroad the adventure back on its track or move on with our game, the separation becomes helpful. Any optional scene can be skipped. Consider Lord of the Rings for a moment. If we ask ourselves, why does the Fellowship stop at the Elven Forest of Lothlorien? Well, it's because Frodo and Sam need to get some magical items that will help them later on in Mordor, namely some liquid starlight and magical rope. These are the essential elements of the scene. The rest is optional. Once you understand that, you can be more flexible on any element that is optional. If Lord of the Rings would have been a role-playing campaign, and the party would want to skip Lothlorien, you as Game Master would only need to come up with a different way for your players to get those essential magical items. In this way, you don't waste time and effort worrying about missed optional elements. Let's consider another example. Imagine that the party is playing police officers, investigating a murder that took place at a posh restaurant. I plan for the party to enter the kitchen to interrogate the chef, and in their investigation discover a jar with some rare herbs that will lead them to the botanical assassin who imported the herbs. Now, I may have planned for things to happen that way, but instead the party decide to have the chef brought in for questioning at the police station. So I need to make some quick choices based on what I've identified as essential versus optional. Is it essential that the characters will enter the kitchen? No. Is it essential that they find the jar? No. It's only essential that they get a clue leading them to the killer. Once we know what is essential, we can find other ways of introducing the essential elements into the story. I can have the chef accidentally say something incriminating, break during investigation, or let one of the characters notice a mysterious residue left by the poison on the chef's fingernail. And that's it. The essential element is delivered. You might wonder if this is applicable to published adventures as well. And the answer is definitely yes. Even more so, in fact. Because in published adventures, there are certain assumptions made by the creator about how the game will progress. Essential information might be in a location that the players choose to avoid, or in the hands of an NPC they killed. You need to understand the expected flow of the adventure, so that if your players deviate from it and miss some essential elements, you can adapt and nudge the game back on track. A word of warning. Just because a scene or an element are optional doesn't mean that they aren't valuable. Plenty of scenes exist for fun, character development, enriching the setting, and many other reasons. Don't give up on them. If you are excited about those scenes or you think your players will enjoy them, those are good enough reasons to keep them, just not at all costs. It's important to practice differentiating optional and essential elements. A good way to do this is to watch a movie you have seen before, preferably an action or adventure film. After every scene, ask yourself, what was essential and what was optional in this scene? If you can't think of something that happened in this scene that is essential for a future scene, then that whole scene was optional. If there was an essential element, identify it and try to think of different ways in which you could have introduced that element to the story later on. Recognizing optional and essential elements in our game is a great skill to have. But just knowing that we need to insert an essential element into the game isn't enough. If our players skipped an essential element of the game, we still need to come up with ways of reintroducing that element on the fly mid-session. That requires some serious improvisational skill, which is good because that is our next lesson. See you there.